They used to say that Henry Baker was a good man, quiet, polite, always kept to himself. But everything changed when he bought the old Victorian house on the edge of town, the one no one dared to live in. It was said to be cursed, the kind of place that seemed to breathe when you weren't looking. Henry didn't believe in that sort of thing, not then. At first the noises were small, a creak in the hallway, footsteps above when no one was home. He thought it was just the wind or rats or maybe his imagination. But then he started hearing the whispers. They came at night, soft and childlike. Sometimes they called his name, sometimes they laughed. "Henry," they'd say, their voices crawling across the walls. He'd light candles to chase the darkness away, but the flames would flicker and die, as if something were breathing on them. Soon Henry stopped sleeping. He'd stare at the walls, trembling, watching shadows twist and move like living things. And then, one night, he saw her, a pale figure standing in the corner of his room. Hair wet, eyes hollow. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at him. Then she whispered, "He's hungry." Henry wasn't seen much after that. Days turned into weeks and the house began to rot again. Windows dark, the air around it thick with decay. That's when Clara, a neighbor who cared too much for her own good, decided to check on him. It was a stormy evening, the kind that makes trees look like they're reaching for the sky. She knocked on his door, no answer. The door creaked open on its own. Inside was worse than she imagined. The smell of mold, the floor sticky under her shoes, the wallpaper moving as though something crawled beneath it. "Henry?" she called. Silence. Then from down the hall, a voice whispered, "Clara." She followed the sound to a candle-lit room. There he was, in Henry Baker. But he didn't look human anymore. His skin hung loose, pale and veined. His eyes were pitch black, and his mouth stretched far too wide. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped, his voice a mixture of his own and something else. "I didn't mean for it to happen." Before she could answer, the shadows behind him began to move. They weren't just shadows, and they were faces. Dozens of them screaming without sound. Clara tried to run, but the house twisted around her. Doors vanished, hallways stretched. And then the floor opened beneath her feet, pulling her down into darkness. The next morning, she was gone. No one ever saw Clara again. But sometimes, people walking by swore they heard her crying through the walls. A few weeks later, Eli, Clara's younger brother, came to town. He didn't believe in ghost stories, only in finding his sister. He arrived just before sundown, flashlight in hand, ready to face whatever was inside. The air grew colder as he stepped onto the porch. The door, once locked, was now wide open, like it had been waiting. Inside, the house was silent, too silent. Then faintly, he heard humming. A tune he recognized, Clara's favorite lullaby. It led him to the basement door, old, splintered, covered in deep claw marks. He hesitated, then opened it. A rush of freezing air hit him. The humming grew louder. He turned on his flashlight. Symbols covered the walls. Strange, burnt markings forming circles around a chair. And in that chair sat Henry Baker. "Henry," Eli said, "where's my sister?" Henry's head jerked up. His mouth twitched into a grin. "She's here," he said. "She's part of the house now." Eli stepped back, but the door slammed shut behind him. The flashlight flickered, and for a split second he saw the walls move. Faces pushed through the wood, mouths open, eyes wide, silently screaming. Then a cold hand grabbed his wrist. Eli, it was Clara. Her eyes were pale and lifeless, her skin gray like candle wax. "He let it in," she whispered. "You have to—" Before she could finish, Henry stood up. Bones cracked, skin tore. Something black and writhing crawled out from his chest. Tendrils reaching across the floor, hungry and alive. Eli screamed, swinging his flashlight, but it was too late. The light hit the ground, and the last thing it showed was Henry's face, stretching, splitting, as something ancient and monstrous burst from within him. Then there was silence. When the sun rose the next morning, people noticed something strange. The Baker house looked new. Fresh paint, clean porch, windows repaired, as if nothing had ever happened. But if you looked close, you could still see faint, bloody handprints on the inside of the basement door. And sometimes, if you pass by at night, you'll see lights flickering inside. You'll hear 3 voices humming softly. Henry's are Clara's, and Eli's. The melody is always the same, slow, haunting, and impossible to forget. They say the house isn't cursed anymore. They say it's alive, it waits, and it always wants more.